in joining us here on this Christmas Eve morning. Merry Christmas, everybody, and happy holidays. As we light our chalice this morning, I urge you to relax and enjoy the warmth of those around you, and to try for the time we're here together to silence the worries and concerns of the outside world and center yourself around our loving, joyful community. I invite Jim Cope to come forward and light our chalice. And please join with us in lighting our chalice by saying the chalice lighting words found in your order of service. We light this chalice for the warmth of love, for the light of truth, and for the energy of action. Thank you, Jim. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Ogden. My name is Dylan Zwick, and I'm the worship leader today. The UU Church is a welcoming, inclusive place where diversity of thought is encouraged, sought, and appreciated. It doesn't matter who you love or how you identify yourself. We come here because we want to think for ourselves and explore with others. We ask questions, value the exchange of ideas and the depth that can come from being in community. If you're new here today, we're glad you could join us. Thanks for coming, and fill out a newcomer card in the pews and put it in the offering basket when it comes by later, and please stay and chat with us after the service. If you're joining us online, please fill out the newcomer card online. Please put your phones on silent, but feel free to take pictures of the service and to post what you hear and see online, and send the message to the broader community. The presence in each and every one of us adds to the atmosphere, and we are glad you're here. Welcome. Our opening reflection today on the meaning of Christmas is by Lenny Scoble, a member of the Foothills, Colorado UU Church and a friend of mine. Why Christmas? Especially to one who doubts. Are you not being hypocritical? Unitarian Universalists, with their penchant for secular humanism, are fond of arguing the validity of Christmas. Is it a Christmas holiday? A pagan holiday? A secular holiday? Even outside my UU circles, there is much apathy about Christmas. It's just another day, heard quoted by many. I know all this, and I don't care. I love Christmas, always have, and always will. It fills me with nostalgia and generosity and goodwill. And as far as the meaning of Christmas is concerned, as a Unitarian Universalist, I believe it is part of our spiritual maturation to search for and assign meaning in all the days of our lives. In this, Christmas is the high water mark of the year, a time when the world slows and considers our relationships with each other. Isn't that in itself enough to celebrate? Worthy of decorations, light, and music. These gifts we give each other at this time of year are more than just demonstrations of our generosity. They are symbols of the gifts we are capable of giving on all the other days of our lives. Gifts of love, compassion, industry, advocacy, the gifts of our common humanity. These were the values of Jesus, the true Christian values.
I really like Christmas. It's sentimental, I know, but I it's really like it. I am hardly religious. I'd rather break bread with Dawkins than Desmond Tutu, to be honest. And yes, I have all of the usual objections to consumerism, to the commercialization of an ancient religion, to the westernization of a dead Palestinian press ganged into selling PlayStations and beer. But I still really like it. I'm looking forward to Christmas, though I'm not expecting a visit from Jesus. I'll be seeing my dad, my brother and sisters, my gran and my mum. They'll be drinking white wine in the sun. I'll be seeing my dad, my brother and sisters, my gran and my mum. They'll be drinking white wine in the sun. I don't go in for ancient wisdom. I don't believe just 'cause ideas are tenacious, it means that they're worthy. I get freaked out by churches. Some of the hymns that they sing have nice chords, but the lyrics are dodgy. And yes, I have all of the usual objections to the miseducation of children who in tax-exempt institutions are taught to externalize blame and to feel ashamed and to judge things as plain right or wrong. But I quite like the songs. Expecting big presents. The old combination of socks, jocks, and chocolates is just fine by me. 'Cause I'll be seeing my dad, my brother and sisters, my gran and my mum. They'll be drinking white wine in the sun. I'll be seeing my dad, my brother and sisters, my gran and my mum. They'll be drinking white wine in the sun. And you, my baby girl, my jet-lagged infant daughter, you'll be handed round the room like a puppy at a primary school, and you won't understand, but you will learn someday that wherever you are and whatever you face, these are the people who make you feel safe in this world. My sweet blue-eyed girl. And if my baby girl, when you're 21 or 31 and Christmas comes around and you find yourself 9,000 miles from home, you'll know whatever comes. Your brothers and sisters and me and your mom will be waiting for you in the sun whenever you come. Your brothers and sisters, your aunts and your uncles, your grandparents, cousins, and me and your mom you in the sun, drinking white wine in the sun, waiting for you in the sun, waiting for you, waiting. I really like Christmas. It's sentimental, I know.
A year ago, the evangelical magazine Christianity Today featured a somewhat begrudging article with the title, "Unitarians and Episcopalians Created American Christmas." The shame felt in this admission was palpable. Episcopalians are bad enough, but Unitarians? How could it be so? Well, it is. I'll read here a selection from that article, written by the history professor Daniel K. Williams. Quote, "Nearly all the promoters of Christmas in the early 19th century were Episcopalians or Unitarians who saw in the holiday an antidote to the allegedly dour congregationalism they identified with Puritan Calvinism. The blessings of Christmas, they thought, must be universal, just as they believed God's offer of salvation was. And Christmas must be a time of joy, not a moment to reflect on the sinful condition of humanity." Some American promoters of Christmas were influenced by the popular British author Charles Dickens, whose story, A Christmas Carol, portrayed the holiday as a time when the cantankerous, miserly Ebenezer Scrooge discovered the joy of generosity. Dickens, who was raised a nominal Anglican, but who joined a Unitarian chapel as an adult, believed in the humanitarian teachings of Jesus. He used his fiction to promote the idea of Christmas as a day for all people to follow their better impulses, become a little less selfish, and adopt a charitable disposition toward all. Unitarians, some of the most anti-Calvinist of the early 19th century Protestants, were optimistic about the possibility of moral reform through human effort. They envisioned Christmas as a day that would unite Christians across the theological spectrum and encourage loving attitudes that would improve society. In Dickens's Christmas Carol, Scrooge experiences what amounts to a Unitarian Christmas conversion. He becomes a better man. If Jesus is necessary for such a conversion, he's needed only as an inspiring moral example of human possibility, not as an atoning savior. Unitarians, after all, didn't accept the idea of substitutionary atonement, and they likewise rejected the idea of Jesus' divinity and all aspects of Trinitarian theology. Yet many became passionate advocates of Christmas in the mid-19th century because they saw in the holiday a story of God's love for the world and the optimistic hope of universal human brotherhood. End quote. There's no real secular figure more closely associated with our conception of Christmas than the 19th century British writer Charles Dickens, whose most famous work is about a cold, mean, and miserly old man transformed in the course of a single night into a warm, kind, and generous benefactor through a profound, supernatural baptism in the spirit of Christmas. The only 19th century writer whose stories rival Dickens in their perpetual relevance was the Danish writer Hans Christian Andersen. Dickens and Andersen were contemporaries and wrote about similar themes. The plight of the industrial working class in a newly transformed world by the factory, the innocence of youth, and the redemptive power of love and generosity within an otherwise cruel world. In fact, they knew each other. Hans Christian Andersen adored Charles Dickens. He said Dickens was his favorite writer in the English language and viewed him as a model and an inspiration for his own writing. And Dickens, for his part, thought that Hans Christian Andersen was, without competition, the single most annoying human being that he had ever met. The story is, they met at a party and both knew the other's work, and after this meeting, Andersen wrote Dickens some adoring letters. Dickens, flattered and polite, wrote back with praise about Andersen's work and an invitation to stay with him a bit if Andersen were ever in London. That was all Hans Christian Andersen required. He wrote back to Dickens saying he'd be there right away, and within a week was at Dickens' door saying, "I'm here." What was supposed to be a 2-week stay extended into a 5-week ordeal with the house guest from hell. On his first morning there, Andersen told Dickens that the custom in Denmark was for the young boys of the house to shave the house guest every morning and ask which of his sons would have the honor. Dickens informed Andersen that in London that was not how things were done and brought him into town to find a barber. A few days later, Andersen received a bad review of his latest story, and he was so crushed that he ran outside to Dickens's yard and wept uncontrollably for hours. Dickens finally went out and gave him a pep talk about how bad reviews are a hazard of the profession and how he'd have bad reviews himself and how it was important to be able to take them in stride and keep on writing. Andersen continued in this vein the whole 5 weeks. Perpetually needy, invariably self-obsessed, and histrionic. He exasperated poor Dickens and infuriated his wife. At the end of 5 weeks, his hosts had reached their limit and basically told Hans Christian Andersen he had to leave. Afterwards, Dickens wrote a note on the mirror of the guest room in his house, quote, "Hans Christian Andersen slept in this room for 5 weeks, which seemed to the family ages." After that visit, he wrote Andersen one final curt, stern letter and then refused any further correspondence. A rejection that, by all accounts, hurt Andersen quite deeply. Now, I honestly feel very sorry for Hans Christian Andersen. Modern biographers suspect he was a closeted, celibate homosexual who was somewhere on the autism spectrum, and he struggled to connect with people while desperately wanting to. There's a persistent theme in his writing, from The Little Mermaid to The Snow Queen to The Little Match Girl, of an outsider who's rejected because they're different, and who feels the pain of this rejection. But surely we can't be too hard on Dickens. Boundaries are important. Attention is finite. And just because somebody can't envision a world greater than themselves does not obligate anybody else to conform to that self-obsession. I suspect most, if not all of us, would have done the same in Dickens's shoes. I know I would. And I think tolerating it for 5 weeks shows the patience of a saint. But how does this align with the admonition to keep the Christmas spirit well the whole year long? Was Charles Dickens, the man who in his most famous work encouraged us all to never let the Christmas spirit leave us, being hypocritical when he kicked Anderson out of his house? If keeping the Christmas spirit all year long is not the practice of incessant, patient, selfless generosity, then what is it? What does it mean, really, to keep the Christmas spirit? Well, what is the Christmas spirit? Is it possible, or even desirable, to always be like a post-conversion Scrooge? George Orwell, in his essay on Charles Dickens, remarks upon that, quote, recurrent Dickens figure, the good, rich man. This character belongs especially to Dickens's early optimistic period. He is usually a merchant. We are not necessarily told what merchandise he deals in. And he's always a superhumanly kind-hearted old gentleman who trots to and fro, raising his employees' wages, patting children on the head, getting debtors out of jail, and in general, acting the fairy god. Of course, he is a pure dream figure, much further from real life than, say, Squeers or Macabre. Even Dickens must have reflected occasionally that anyone who was so anxious to give his money away would never have required it in the first place. End quote. It's essentially a happily ever after scenario that we don't think too critically about because we know it never really happens. So is the Christmas spirit, then, a fiction no more reflective of our real world than those spirits that visited Scrooge upon his pivotal night? I don't think so. But I do think, perhaps for a more useful understanding of the Christmas spirit, we could look beyond the guidance of literature or theology and towards behavioral psychology. Studies of generous behavior have shown that when it comes to, for example, a willingness to give to strangers who say they are in need, the most significant predictor of kindness is not what you would expect. What has the greatest impact on kindness towards strangers is not whether one regularly attends church, whether one believes in cosmic justice, whether one is educated, whether one has children, whether one is a Republican or a Democrat, whether one is wealthy, or even how generous one tends to be in other situations. The number one factor that affects the willingness to help strangers is time pressure. If somebody feels busy, rushed, or stressed, they're much less likely to stop and help a stranger, even if that help is quick and financial. Perhaps the Christmas spirit is not the opposite of hate and greed, but of pressure and constraint. You see, I think we make a major categorical mistake if we associate the Christmas spirit primarily with a feeling. A warm, fuzzy happiness that makes every interaction cheerful and every endeavor fun. Don't get me wrong, those feelings, if you have them, are great, but nobody is capable of feeling like that all the time, and frankly, we wouldn't want to. Furthermore, those feelings on their own aren't all that useful. They're in the same league as our thoughts and prayers when tragedies occurs and our virtual hugs and likes on Facebook. Instead, I would encourage us to view the Christmas spirit and the generosity and appreciation for our fellow people it entails as a scarce and finite resource. At Christmas time, we enact a social custom honed over centuries where it's okay, in fact expected, to take some time away from work, to be generous, and even to indulge yourself in what you want. We do each other the favor of all planning this together, which makes it so much easier to do. So how can we keep the Christmas spirit all year long? I have no complete prescription, and it must vary for every person. But I think we might be able to draw some lessons and inspiration from a group who, somewhat ironically, Christmas, per se, isn't really a thing. Observant, Orthodox Jews take one full day each week and set it apart as a holy day, a holiday, if you will. It's a day to shut out the cares and business of the world, to be with family, to celebrate traditions, and to connect with the community and something greater than yourself. How are they able to do this? Well, it isn't always easy. The cares and trials of life and of making a living exist for them as they exist for all of us. Keeping the Sabbath requires planning, discipline, prioritization, and a supportive family and community. But most don't view it as a burden, but as a joy, and as something to look forward to all week. Few of us view Christmas as a hassle and distraction from the important business of life. And those who do, like Ebenezer Scrooge at the beginning of A Christmas Carol, we don't look upon with admiration or envy, but with pity and even derision. Christmas is not an obnoxious interruption of life, but a part of what makes life worth living. So how then might we keep the Christmas spirit throughout the next year? Well, the reason that we celebrate Christmas when we do is, of course, not based upon the historicity of Christ's date of birth, but instead upon the solstice and the ancient celebrations it entails. Celebrations of the hope and expectation that the days will now get longer, and the warmth and bounty of the spring and summer will be here with us again. Both Christmas and the solstice are celebrations of birth and rebirth, time of renaissance. I would encourage you all to keep the Christmas spirit this next year by thinking through how you can spend more time on generosity to your community, your family, and yourself. It's okay to not make every day Christmas and not celebrate all the time. In fact, it's absolutely necessary. But try to find some time to get away from the cares and turmoil of everyday obligations and to focus on something less immediate, but ultimately more important. Deliberately plan for it and prioritize it, and communicate this to those close to you to get their support and understanding. I'm not saying it needs to be involvement in the UUCO, although to be clear, I'm also not saying that. But I hope for your sake that you figure out what's important to you and do what you need to make the time. And I hope for all of us that we're able to maintain the Christmas spirit all year long. Merry Christmas.
I traveled with my family to Palestine and Israel a few months ago, and we went to Bethlehem, and we visited the church that is built up around the place where Jesus was supposedly born. And it was solemn and sacred and beautiful, no matter what your theology. And my kiddo, Matilda, was being a full 3-year-old. She was joyfully dancing and singing, and at one point galloping around like a horse. And I kept rushing around her in Jesus's birthplace, embarrassed, trying to shush her and trying to get her to be in the space with more reverence, until I felt a glimpse of the obvious, that Jesus was once a 3-year-old too, doing all the things that kids do at that age. And Mary, in all of her holiness, probably felt equally annoyed with Jesus at times. And she probably questioned her parenting and probably wished that Jesus would stop galloping around like a horse in public places. The story of Jesus is not a story of perfection. He was born in a manger, in the midst of danger, in what is modern-day Palestine, a region that is fraught with great violence and challenge right now. There is nothing easy or perfect about Christmas time. And amidst all of the divinity and beauty and joy of this ancient story, there exists imperfection and fear and sadness. So I invite us to sit in stillness for some moments and to consider our own modern day version of miracle in the midst of reality. Where are you experiencing the complexity in this Christmas season? Let's just take a few moments of stillness together. Spirit of life and of love, be with us in this special time. Hold us as we experience perfect imperfection. May we tenderly hold all of our most human moments, the loved ones that are not with us, the illnesses and missed moments, our regrets and sadness, our anger and disappointment. Hold us in humility and care for one another. And may we also find some miracle in our lives, a joy that reminds us of all that might be. Let us recognize and celebrate those miracles, large and small. Let us hold the perfect imperfection. Amen. Blessed be. And we continue our collective prayer by coming forward to engage in our weekly ritual that helps us to collectively hold our challenges and our joys. In just a moment, you'll be invited to come forward to light a candle and drop a stone in our sacred waters. As you light a candle, I invite you to let it hold your hopes and your memories and your gratitudes for all of the beauty you are experiencing today. And as you drop a stone in our gathering waters, may it hold your burdens and your sadness and your desires for forgiveness. May dropping a stone, just that simple act in the water, hold all of those with care and intention. Please come forward now.
Now please join me in calling for the offering. Now please rise and body your voice, and facing the center aisle, sing together the offering song printed in your order of service. Thank you for giving. This offering helps this church, helps us in our efforts to improve the world in big ways and small. Now, there's just one announcement. Well, actually two now. If you're feeling particularly moved by the Unitarian Christmas spirit and would like to attend another Christmas Eve service, the First Unitarian Church in Salt Lake City has invited us to theirs this evening at 5:30 or at 7 p.m. It's the same service both times. If you're unable to make it down to Salt Lake but would still like to attend, there's a Zoom option as well, and you can find the link on their website. And there's another announcement that I just found out about this morning, and that is that Kristen has now passed the final thing she needs to pass in order to be officially a Unitarian minister. So she will be able to be ordained. So congratulations, Kristen, although I don't think any of us had any doubt you would. All right.
Joy to the world, the word is come. Let earth with praises ring. Every heart prepare a room. And heaven and nature sing. And heaven and nature sing. And heaven and nature sing. Joy to the earth, and gladness reigns. Let hearts their songs import. Fields and floods, bright fields and plains. Repeat the sounding joy. Repeat the sounding joy. Repeat the sounding joy. No night sins and sorrows grow. Nor thorns invest the ground. Let righteousness His glory show. As far as love is found, as far as love is found, as far as love is found.
Service comes to an end. Join me in saying the chalice extinguishing words in your order of service. We extinguish this chalice, but not the warmth of love, the light of truth, nor the energy of close with a few verses from the famous poem, I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day. It was written by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, a Unitarian, in December of 1863, as a civil war was raging throughout the United States. And in despair, I bowed my head. There is no peace on earth, I said. For hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth to all goodwill. Then pealed the bells more loud and deep. God is not dead, nor doth God sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth to all goodwill.